Good evening, Bears fans, and welcome to this Monday night edition of the CHGO Bears After Dark podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app and use promo code CHGO when you sign up. And how's it going, everybody? Will DeWitt, Greg Braggs Jr. here to kind of kick off tonight's After Dark. Of course, Cody will join us in 15 minutes to share his Monday Night Football bets, and Nicholas Moreano will join us in about a half hour to have some really, I think, in-depth and interesting Bears discussions that we have on tap here this evening. But Greg, man, how's it going? You surviving? We're almost through it. We're almost there.
Yeah, we're almost there. I almost had a mental breakdown yesterday watching the game, and then had another mental breakdown during our post-game show yesterday. So I'm getting through it as best I can. I mean, to me, I've defended this coaching staff. I feel like they're trying to get the most out of nothing when it comes to the talent on the roster, all due respect. They're really turning, like, to me, they've developed and coached them up to compete in these games. Obviously, yesterday they let go of the rope, probably for the first time this season. But playing, as I said in my rant to start yesterday's show and talked about it a ton on Twitter and everything else ad nauseum, to play Justin Fields, not only to play him in the second half and play him with 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter of a 30-point blowout, but the way they used him in the first half, I also find offensive. Mm-hmm. And to me, all of that across the board was some of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen from any coaching staff ever. And I'm trying not to be hyperbolic when I say that, but I'm sorry. You don't use a quarterback like that. He's showing he's hurt. Then you use him again. You throw him, QB, power right into a brick wall of three defensive linemen. Unacceptable, and to use him at the end the way they did, I just thought it was disrespectful. All the credit to Justin Fields for his toughness and leadership. He's going out there and being who he is. But for the coaches to use him like he's a backup quarterback, finishing up the game in a 30-point blowout with 2 minutes to go, I found it disrespectful, and I have a huge problem with it. And it makes me question Matt Eberflus. I think his situational decisions this year, play calling wise, have been questionable. Well, this was a situational moment too. They talked about it after the game. Well, we thought about taking him out. No, you should have taken him out. And I have a real issue with it.
So more than 24 hours have passed, but I feel like, just based off of my, softball question that came your way. Yeah, your blood pressure, I think, is still up there a little bit.
I'm steaming. I was steaming at work all day about it too. I talked to a few friends about it, and it got just as heated. Every time I start to talk about it, I start swearing and my heart rate starts pumping. I honestly, if I had been at home, I probably would have smashed my TV. That's how upset I was at the studio watching the game yesterday. It to me, it's just so irresponsible to use your quarterback that way. And I know we were all like, don't bring up injuries. You're going to jinx it. You're speaking it into existence and stuff. I at this point, if the coaches want to be this stupid, I'm not afraid of any jinx because they're putting themselves in this position. We saw it with Derrick Rose in this city. Next week, they're going to play him in front of that Soldier Field crowd. And if something happens, God forbid, it'll be one of the worst moments in Chicago sports history. If it's something disastrous. And that's what that's the tree they're barking up. So all these people that, he's a football player, you're soft, whatever. You can say whatever, you can have whatever. I don't agree. I vehemently disagree. And it's to a point where you're playing with fire. And if they make it out of the season without an injury, they're lucky. And they honestly don't deserve them by the way they use them and get that luck of something not happening to them when they're being irresponsible with the most valuable asset in this franchise. I can't overstate it enough. I mean, like I said, I know we talked a lot about it on the postgame yesterday, but it's at the forefront of my mind. And it's the only thing I'm worried about for the game Sunday. I don't care about the development. I don't care about any of it. Get him through the game healthy, for the love of God. Because it would be so Chicago for some Shakespearean moment to happen to the one thing that we have going good in this city with our Chicago sports. He's the only bright spot across all the board besides what we're doing here at CHGO. It's another bright spot. For the players on the field, across all sports, Justin Fields is the only beacon of hope we have.
And just for everyone listening or watching, as you're watching, listening to Greg and like that kind of rant that he just had, I'm sitting here and I am softly knocking on wood throughout the entirety of my desk, just to be safe. And I know, like you said, jinxing be damned. I appreciate you sharing how you're feeling about this. I know a lot of people are behind you. I see it in the chat. I'm there with you in terms of like it being neglectful, in terms of being slightly disrespectful to Justin. And this isn't Madden. This is real life. These are real people, real players. And if you derail an entire offseason of Justin, his development, both personally and within this team, then what was it all for at the end of the day? So I totally understand where you're coming from. I just want to say hey to Kurt, who was first in our chat. Rob's in here. Stephen Nicholas, one of our producers, is right here. And he says he's with you, Braggs. Same thing with Frank. Edwards asks, where's Cody at? He'll be here in a little bit for those Monday Night Football bets. And then also a good question from Rob that I actually was going to kind of follow up with you too. So you and me have been similar this year in terms of like backing up this coaching staff throughout some of those dumb decisions this season and ineptitude that we have seen throughout these weeks, understanding the lack of talent, understanding this team will take time. And even Coach Eberflus today kind of reiterated just building a foundation, and it is more than wins and losses. It's a lot about those habits in the building during games, both on the field and on the sideline. But a game like yesterday, does it have you losing faith and wondering if this is not the right, I guess, group of coaches that the Bears should have for this rebuild? Because like I said, we've both been backing them up, but with a game full of decisions that have you more than scratching your head that we saw on Sunday, like does this kind of creep into your mind a bit of like maybe they should move on from someone like Eberflus and his staff right now, or are you still going to be a little bit more patient when it comes to like next year?
Well, I don't think it's fair to make any kind of an assessment on the coaching staff with the talent they have. We're talking about Justin Fields not having talent around him. Defense, we might talk about I've talked about how the secondary has developed well, even though we have a lack of pass rush with this team, which we'll talk about later. Well, the coaching staff gets that same excuse too. They don't have the talent. Ryan Poles did not put talent on the field because they're rebuilding this roster. And I agree with how they are rebuilding this. So because to me, a rebuild, you rip it down from the ground up. Have they been perfect? Has Ryan Poles been perfect? No, but this is what it takes when you do a rebuild. I've seen it with other teams in the city. I'm a Cubs fan, and to me, we keep going through this hamster wheel of we have one good year every 10 years. Well, why is that? Because we never build the team properly. We always try to put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. We, instead of just being done with the Mitch experience, when you have some foresight, you maybe take Jalen Hurts in the second round and move on from him. You bring in a veteran quarterback, Nick Foles. That's just a waste of time, prolonging the obvious. So they're doing, in my opinion, what's necessary. And the coaching staff, I believe, deserves credit for having this team compete. Every week until yesterday, they've competed in every game with the Bills, the Eagles, the Dolphins. Even early in the season, it hasn't been pretty, but that's because the roster isn't good. They've developed players. It hasn't been pretty. They were talking about it on the noon show with Adam Hogan, Corey Wooten, and them, talking about the secondary. Oh, we don't know about Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon. I disagree, respectfully, of course, but at the same time, you have to give this secondary credit. They are improving. Before yesterday, the last three games against the Packers, Eagles, and Bills, three teams that could be in the playoffs, the secondary balled out. And that's with historically bad defensive line in our franchise's history. So that's stuff to coach. They have coached them up to do that. They've developed these players. Jalen Jones comes in, plays well. Josh Blackwell comes in and plays well. Eddie Jackson, before he got hurt, had, to me, his best year as a Bear with the leadership he showed.
Mm-hmm.
So Jaquan Brisker is a bright spot to me going forward. Get him a pass rush. Let's see how this secondary looks with a modicum of a pass rush. Justin Fields. Yes, we're going to give the majority of the credit to Justin Fields, but his coming out party, the coaches have something to do with that too. They adjusted after the Washington game. So I think development-wise and coaching these guys up week to week, I think they've done a good job. Now, do we know about how good they are with, in-game strategy, situational? That's what I mean with Matt Eberflus. The situational stuff I still have a question about. And now what they did yesterday was the stupidest thing I have ever seen in my life. So yes, that's the first crack in the door. I'm like, oh my God, because you got to be able to do it all. You got to develop, you got to coach, you got to understand the situations. And that was a major misstep yesterday. Not just a minor one, like you didn't call a timeout right, or you challenged something wrong in a moment during a game. This is your franchise quarterback, and you mismanaged the situation. Because if you're gonna tell me, oh, he should be out there, stop being soft brags, then call plays that are responsible to understanding what your personnel is around him. It was irresponsible. So, and I won't hear it any other way. I just won't. So that is something. But again, they deserve next year just as much as other players that are going to be here returning next year deserve this benefit of the doubt to go into next season with a more healthy roster, put together. And then start making assessments. Next year is a big year for these guys. They're not going to get a pass every year, but this is the first year of a rebuild. So at the same time, with criticism that we have, which in my opinion is fair, we do have to take a step back and look at the pros, look at the cons, and they'll do the same thing. They are going to self-scout themselves when the season is over. And I hope they look at some of these things and improve upon them next year.
Well, they better, to say the least there, Greg. And you mentioned the lack of awareness when it comes to situations from the coaching staff and those decisions yesterday. And I couldn't help but kind of chuckle because I find it super ironic because this is a coaching staff that has preached situational awareness, situational smarts, right? That's literally one of the parts of the principles that Eberflus has been laying and part of the foundation since his arrival almost a year ago. Yet the decisions totally counteracted that yesterday. It was very counterintuitive and against pretty much everything that he's told us. And that's what I take exception to, because when I hear one thing and then I see like the actions back up the talk, great. You're building trust with me. But when you're asking this of your players, right, situational sparks, but then as a coach, you're not adhering to it yourself, just as you went in depth on, that's when I start getting frustrated because it starts to lose, I think with me, a little bit of that trust factor, as I mentioned. And, we'll talk about this historically bad defense later on the show when Nick comes on, because you tasked me last night with research.
You got all this work to do on game days. And here I am putting you on the spot on Twitter to go to work doing some research. But you did it, and you didn't let me down. Yesterday you came up with the quick research, and then today you doubled down and came back with even more of an illustration to what I was asking about. So I'm excited to talk about it.
And there's more I didn't even put on social just for you, so we can talk about it later on. But it is bad. It's bad when I actually got excited when I woke up, because I started this last night and I kind of got a glimpse of some of like the stats that I wanted to dive in deeper on. And then I woke up and the first thing I wanted to do wasn't even a cup of coffee. I was like, I'm going straight to the laptop and I'm going to figure this out, because I was really interested to see exactly how bad this defense is. And I think everyone who sticks around and waits for it will be, I think, pleasantly displeased by the results that I've been able to kind of come up with here. But it does look like Cody has arrived, and I want to make sure we get him on here with plenty of time before this Monday Nighter kicks off. Cody, guess what? We don't have a stinker.
I know. It's nice, isn't it? Isn't it nice to get excited about a Monday Night Football game?
It's nice to win one every once in a while, Cody.
Yeah, this feels like a win. Yes, the fact that we get to watch like a good game tonight.
I feel like out of every single After Dark and bringing you on, this by far and large is the best matchup that we've had. Like, I don't even recall having one that we're like, this should be interesting. It's not great, but it'll be fine. Like, it's been piss poor all year until now.
Yeah, literally, this might be the best primetime game of the year as far as like the matchup, and even like the, I guess the implications, because I think these two teams are still fighting for like that top seed in the AFC. So, yeah, no, it's exciting. So, with that said, guys, I'm taking the Bengals on the money line tonight. You can take the Bengals on with 2.5 points if you want. I mean, anytime it gets below 3 points, I always just take the money line for whoever I like, because especially on the favorite, because if the team wins by, 1 or 2 points, or if the team that you don't pick wins or covers or doesn't cover and it's because of 1 or 2 points, then it could be a painful bad beat. So that's why Bengals it's at 2.5 really doesn't matter to me. If you like the Bills, 2.5 is a nice number, because that I would tell you to take the money line rather than the spread, because or I would tell you to take the spread rather than the money line for the favorite. But with the underdog, if they lose by 3, then that's painful. So, and it goes vice versa in the other direction for a different scenario, right? So anyway, that doesn't matter though, because I like the underdog tonight. The Bengals are a home underdog against the Bills. They've won 7 straight. The Bills have won 6 straight. But I don't know. I don't know about you guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But the Bills have been underwhelming to me in their 6 straight wins. I was looking at their schedule. They, of course, if you look at their game against the Bears last week, the final score was a blowout, but that game was much closer for majority of that game. And they beat the Dolphins by 3 at home, and to me that's underwhelming just because of the weather conditions. I thought that really benefited them, considering the Dolphins play in Miami where it's warm all the time. I remember on Thanksgiving they beat the Lions by 3. Like they've led a lot of teams that I feel like they should be like, I don't know, at least winning by double digits in. They're letting a lot of teams hang around. And now they get a good team on a Monday night in prime time. A Bengals team that hasn't lost at home all year. A Bengals team that is 20-3 against the spread. That includes a postseason since, I guess, in their last 23 games.
Wow.
So I think they're 12-3 against the spread this season as well. So like they've been really good against the spread. Primetime underdogs this year have been very profitable. Yeah, I mean,
I think for me, Cody, I think what it is with the Bills, we looked at them as Super Bowl contenders. Not that the Bengals aren't; they were in the Super Bowl, but at the same time, we look at Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes at this different stratosphere. And the Bengals just don't go away. That's the kind of like identity they have this year. But I feel like both teams kind of win the same way. They just do what they got to do, whether it's Josh Allen throwing and balling out, or if they got to ground and pound. I think they're capable of both, and they scratch and claw and just do what they got to do to win games. The difference is, I just think the different expectation levels we had for both teams going in, especially with the way the Bengals started initially.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, they started 4-4. They lost on primetime to the Ravens, and people were starting to talk about or question if the Bengals were going to just miss the playoffs. And then, like I said, they've won 7 straight now. They haven't lost since October, and they've beat some good teams. They beat the Chiefs in that stretch. They were blowing out New England last week. They kind of let them come back. But they ended up not only winning but covering. They've just been a great team to bet on all year, man. So, yeah, I'm gonna just keep riding that tonight, at least for me. I think like to go off what you were saying, Braggs, is like I feel like both teams, like you said, they do a lot of the same stuff. I do think the Bills they try to throw it a little bit more because their run game can be inconsistent, but I think the Bengals' run game is playing as good as it's been played all season coming into this game. And at the beginning of the year, it kind of struggled. Joe Mixon kind of got off to a slow start. So I think the team that wins this game is the one who, is able to run the ball better and take care of the ball, because Josh Allen has also, we witnessed ourselves last week, he's thrown some interceptions in the red zone a lot in these last few games, which is uncharacteristic, but he's kind of like he's the guy who makes that team go, right? So yeah, if the Bills don't turn the ball over tonight, then yeah, they probably will win. But I don't know. I just feel like the spot for the Bengals here at home, you got the crowd behind you, and you're playing really well. And they haven't lost there all season. Like, I don't know. To me, this is like this game means more to the Bengals, I think, in terms of, I guess, maybe proving to people that they really are for real again, because so many people think they were just like the team that got hot at the end of last year and went to the Super Bowl. But I don't know. I think they're for real already. So that's one reason why I want to take them too. So I regret not putting a small wager on them to win the Super Bowl, or at least win the AFC a few weeks ago, because those odds have come down now. But yeah, that's what I'm riding with tonight, guys. I was looking at the props, kind of like the under on Hayden Hurst receptions, just because he's been out for 3-4 weeks because of an injury, and he's a tight end. And again, coming off an injury, I don't know how he's going to play in this first game back. So I think it was at 3.5. It's at like minus 140 though, so maybe throw it in a same game parlay if you want to. But there's a lot you could bet on tonight. Obviously a great game, but I'm sticking to one bet, and that's just, I think the Bengals win this one.
What about T. Higgins? I hope he goes off tonight. What about you?
I hope he doesn't go off. Or if he does go off, it's not so much to where he puts up 40 fantasy points so Greg beats me in fantasy football. Listen, he could have. I can see him having a good game just because they're going to definitely be, eyeing in on Jamar Chase, right? Like the Bills' defense, so they got to give up something to someone, right? So I can see him having a good game, but again, hopefully it's not like 3 touchdowns, dude.
I don't know. Maybe we'll see about it. He has a touchdown in at least 1, 2, 3, 4 of his last 5.
Yeah,
but he hasn't had multiple touchdowns.
I mean,
all year. Lucky you. Oh wait, that's receiving. Yeah. Oh, no, I was looking at the right column. My bad. We're good.
Yeah. I think taking the over or any over on a receiving or a rushing prop tonight is one of those nights where I don't think you have to really think too much about it. That said, both these teams, they've gone under in most of their games more than they have over. But with the way that they play and how big this game is, I think the total's like 50.5. Like, so you're asking for a 27-30 game or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, they could easily do that with the way these teams move the ball, right? But both defenses are pretty good too. So I don't know. I lean over on this one, and I rarely lean over on primetime games. But again, we're getting a good one tonight. Like,
maybe the first over you take all year in primetime.
On a primetime game, yeah. So, I think do an anytime touchdown like parlay, like with Joe Mixon, Josh Allen, and I don't know, freaking Higgins or Jamar Chase. I think that's worth a few bucks. Why not? Like, I think
future Bear T. Higgins.
Future Bear T. Higgins, who's scoring at least 40 fantasy points tonight. For everyone listening and watching at home, Cody is in the CHGO Staff Fantasy Football League Championship here tonight against Greg over on the Blackhawks beat. So it's a big night for
Greg
Cody.
Boyson, not Greg
That's right.
Braggs.
The other Greg
Yeah,
B.
Boyson.
Greg, the calmer Greg of the CHGO bunch.
And we have a championship belt that we're working on getting designed that
Hell yeah.
actually I want input right now on the spot. Like we want this thing to be one that like gets passed around every year, right? Like we're not going to buy everyone a brand new one every year.
No. I'll gladly give it. If I win this matchup, I'll gladly take it and like hang on to it for a full year and then give it to whoever wins next year, or keep it if I somehow go back-to-back champion.
Cody, real quick, I have a question as far as I need your betting expertise. The betting expert. When it comes
come true.
There it is. With the Bears and the Vikings this Sunday. Right now the Vikings are only listed as a 1-point favorite over the Bears. And I'm curious your thoughts to this, because I guess the common sense explanation is that Vegas believes that the Vikings are going to rest their starters against the Bears, or do you think that Vegas safely puts an early week line like that until they get confirmation? Like, did the Vikings already get word this early in the week, or did Vegas, is Vegas playing it safe until they know?
I wouldn't even. To me, if they're playing it safe, that they would have put that line at 6 or 7 points. So, in my eyes, I guess they know something. Like, I don't know. Personally, right now, I'd slam the Vikings because, listen, I watched that game. I bet the Packers on Sunday. Like, the Vikings cannot rest their players in the like after what just happened. How can you go into playoffs after a loss like that? Like, at the very least, like, slam the Vikings first half or something like that. There's just absolutely no way that the Vikings coaching staff can think that it's smart to rest their players going in the last week of the year, after just getting embarrassed by a Packers team that they could have ended their season, dude. And now they might potentially have to play them in the playoffs. So all these Vikings fans I've seen on social media that are still being optimistic, like, I get it, you're 12-3. Hey, I've been there many times, right? But you could have ended their year. You could have, like, finally put Aaron Rodgers, the guy that he is, you could have put him, like, 6 feet under, finally. And you go out there and you lay an egg, and Justin Jefferson has, like, the worst game of his career. Jair Alexander just trolling him all day. Like, just an embarrassment. Absolute embarrassment. If the Vikings do that, I will absolutely take whoever the hell they are playing in the first round of playoffs, whoever they're playing. And, like, it's not surprising to me that happened to them. Like, I think it's not even, like, a stat, or it's not even, like, just not only my opinion, but it's like also like a stat. If you go on actionnetwork.com, like, they have a stat of, like, related to, like, luckiest and unluckiest teams in the NFL, and they had the Vikings at number 1 for the luckiest teams in the NFL, based off however they measure that, right? But we've also seen you can understand why they might think that anyway, just based off all the close games they've been in. You can look at their game they had against the Bills, where they should have easily lost that game, but the Bills just they screwed that ending up themselves. Like, they've had a lot of games at the end go their way, and so, like, there's a reason that the Vikings, the 12-3 Vikings, were 3.5-point underdogs on Sunday on the road at Green Bay, a team that was 7-8. Like, there is a reason for that. The books wanted everyone to take the Vikings, and I didn't bite because I've thought all season that they're one of the luckiest teams in the NFL. So, basically, to go back to what you were saying, Greg, I would slam the Vikings because I just don't see them sitting their starters. Like, and if
I agree. They need the momentum.
Right.
I think it'd be presumptuous of them to sit
also,
their
even if they did sit them, Do you think the Bears would beat the second string players for the Vikings, considering what this roster is? Right. I mean, I guess Justin Fields will have himself a day. Right? It's at Soldier Field, right? So like,
Right.
it's not even at a dome. I don't know, man. Like, I would take the Vikings, honestly. Like I think they're at least going to play them for a half, and that's why I said.
Well,
if
I'll tell you what.
Safe about it, take them in the first half.
Well, I'll tell you what. I've been trying to get this Kari Blasingame money all year long, Cody, and I put $5 on plus 13,000 on him anytime touchdown, and it would have made me $5 made $655, and they get in the red zone. And he goes out and runs a route in the flat, and they cover him and not Cole Kmet. And then Cole Kmet's wide. Like, can we leave the fullback open who they haven't thrown to all year? God dang, man.
Yeah. I watched the pregame show and you said that, and then I know exactly what play you're talking about, and I was like, Greg had to probably have a little bit of a heart attack in that moment when that happened.
I had a few heart attacks. I was working on a baker's dozen yesterday.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Well,
it was a frustrating day, ungambling related, for Bears reasons. It was very frustrating, just because the Bears had for most part all season they've been in games and gave us reason for optimism for the future. And there was nothing about that game yesterday that gave me any optimism, man. Who would have thought the most embarrassing loss of the year was going to come to the Lions?
Don Burr did.
I'll give you plenty of optimism once we get to the offseason and Justin Fields is healthy. Until then,
yep.
That's all I care about too, man. Shit, the amount of times I was holding my breath every time he ran with the ball or got sacked. I was like, just put Peterman in there. Let's see him sling it. Shit, that was the main reason. What was so disappointing, right?
I got you.
Exactly.
I'm right there with you.
All right, Cody. Well, we're going to move along here for the rest of the show. Thanks again for hopping on like you have all season long for these Monday Night Football bets. I really appreciate it. I know we already had people in the chat clamoring for you before you hopped on, so I know everyone looks forward to this every single week. So thanks again, man, and we'll see you soon. All right, good luck tonight.
Yeah, because this is your last one, right, Cody? Because next week
is this the last Monday Night Football game? Okay. Well, hopefully this is the one that I think I was right about last week's game too. I hope I've helped people make money. So
you're doing a great job, Cody. You're one of the best in the business. So keep up the good work.
Yep, keep it up. And like I said, good luck tonight. Let's go T. Higgins. That's all I'm going to say. And we'll see you around. Adios.
All right. See you guys.
All right, up next, Nicholas Moreano is going to join us. But first, I am going to give you a message from our partners over at Shady Rays, because Shady Rays never understood why sunglasses were just so expensive. So they set out to change it. You don't have to break the bank for quality sunglasses this fall, because our friends at Shady Rays have you covered. They are premium polarized shades. They feature world-class optical clarity, substantial durability, and styles cater to everyone in every lifestyle. The best part about Shady Rays is that they have the most insane protection program in all of eyewear. They have lost and broken replacements. That means if you lose or break your shades on day 1, day 10, day 100, day 1000, it doesn't matter. They will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. It doesn't matter if you drop in a lake, off a cliff, literally anything happens to them, Shady Rays will replace your sunglasses. And even with that strong protection program, they still manage to make quality that I can tell by, holding the Shady Rays in my hands always seem as good as any other expensive pair that I've ever worn. And customers seem to agree with over 200,000 5-star reviews. So for our listeners, Shady Rays, they're running their deepest deal of the season. Use code CHGO for 50% off 2 or more pairs at shadyrays.com. That is buy one, get one free. You can get 2 pairs for as low as $54. Redeem only at shadyrays.com, where you can find all of their newest and best shades.
And absolutely, I am not going to mess this up, Will, because I'm going to tell you all about our guys at Chi-Town Custom Cornhole, the #1 cornhole provider for Chicagoland and Illinois since 2007. Their signature box style design can be digitally printed, covered in vinyl, and painted. Their cornhole boards come with built-in drink holders recessed in on the back, LEDs that light up the hole and exterior handles for easy carrying and handcrafted scorekeepers. Veteran owned and operated, they can ship anywhere and offer local pickups, specializing in corporate designs for your company's next marketing or social event, wedding gifts, and gifts for all occasions, and especially for tailgaters and backyard barbecues. Go check out their website, ChytownCornhole.com, and make sure to follow them on Instagram at Chi-Town Custom Cornhole Boards.
Mic drop. Boom.
Next week, we're going to finish strong because, I for whatever reason, I was like, do I go right now? But then we made eye contact, and I was like, all right, this is my moment.
See, thank God
I got stage fright for a second. I was like,
yeah, thank God he said eye contact. 'Cause I was looking here at you, and my camera's up here. So
I could just tell you had that look on your face, like, Greg, start talking.
This is you. I was letting you have that open space because last week you were just bragging about how ready you were for it, even though I was concerned. So I knew you had it in the bag, like you did. Let's bring on Nick. I want to hear what happened at House Hall today because it seemed. What was the word we used in Slack? Weird? Was it a weird day at House Hall?
It was weird, you guys, and I know why that line moved from the Vikings and Bears. It's because there is now, and we might as well get right into what Eberflus was saying today. After yesterday's post-game press conference, it sounded like Justin Fields, if he's healthy enough to play, he's going to play. It seemed like today that narrative has kind of changed a little bit, and here's kind of what Eberflus was asked to give some context, exactly the questions that were asked and what Eberflus's exact comments were. So in his postgame, like I said, Fields would play if he's healthy. Does that go for everyone? That's what Eberflus was asked. And here's his direct quote. Like I said, we're working on that, on everybody, including Justin. And we're going to visit with Ryan Poles, the GM, the rest of the coaching staff, the health of the football team, the entire health of the team. To me, is where we were 2 weeks ago is different than where we are now. And I thought that was important that, he put that last part in there because just 2 weeks ago, it was full go for Justin Fields. He's going to play the last two games regardless. No idea of shutting him down. And then they had discussions during the game. Well, is he going to go out there during this series? And now you're having these discussions this week about whether or not Justin Fields will be actually playing in the game on Sunday. So we have to keep that in mind. And then he was asked a follow-up to clarify, you're talking about sitting Fields. Well, I would just say that ongoing conversations about everybody, what we need to do, what's best interest for our football team going forward, that conversation we're going to have that all the way through Wednesday, all the way through Friday, and we'll decide as we go. But then he was asked again, if he is healthy, Justin Fields, is that the case that he'll play? He said, yes. So there's a lot going on here, you guys, but it seemed pretty. You go 2 weeks ago, like Eberflus was saying, Justin's going to play. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case, you guys. I really don't know if we're going to see number one out there against a Vikings team that, are they going to play their start, whatever the circumstance may be. But it just seemed like all the hits that you guys were talking about, what they were kind of doing in that game. He took a bunch of hits. He's going out there having to throw behind a beaten up offensive line. Wide receivers are not getting open. He's taking these unnecessary hits in a game that doesn't matter. Now you're bringing Ryan Poles into the situation, you guys. Like, I wonder if he's coming down there to Eberflus like, hold up, wait a minute. We have a chance to get the number one overall pick. And Justin Fields, he's already shown us what we need to see. Let's not go out there and risk his health. I know Cody brought up Nathan Peterman. That may be the move on Sunday, but I think Eberflus honestly drags this out all the way up until Friday. It was like the Thanksgiving situation where we didn't know if Fields was going to play. That's probably the scenario that's going to happen this week where we're not going to have any clarification. Eberflus and Fields will speak on Friday. If Fields shows up on the injury report, that would not surprise me whatsoever, but I bet you this drags out all the way until he cannot possibly put it off anymore.
Well, we talked about it, Nick, on the postgame show. We were saying, I brought up your story you've told about being in the press box with Ryan Poles when Darnell Mooney got hurt and how upset visibly and and what he was saying, audibly upset about the injury. And wow, that's where I was asking, where is Ryan Poles yesterday? Maybe he felt it was inappropriate to go down at the halftime tunnel and ream out his coach and tell him, like, you're not handling this right and he needs to be gone. Maybe he's not that type of GM. But that gives me some semblance of a hope with these guys that they are talking, that he did say those things about talking with Ryan Poles, because that tells me that is what happened, because he didn't say that in the immediate post-game presser after the game yesterday. So that could be finally, better minds coming together and thinking about this rationally, so that gives me hope. It really does, because it was irresponsible the way they handled it yesterday. And it's Ryan Poles' job to talk to Matt Eberflus about this. So he better be. Not that I didn't think he would, but just yesterday was just so bizarre. And I just thought it was unacceptable. So I'm glad to hear it. I really am.
I bet you it was like 5 a.m. House Hall. Eberflus is in there like grinding tape or whatever he's doing at 5 minutes here. I go, like a knock on the door, and it's like that little Ryan Pace like peeking in, like, hey,
Yeah.
we have something to talk about. Because I forgot who said it. I think it was Brett in the chat. Like, once I heard this afternoon Ryan Poles' name got brought up, something happened. Something has changed between yesterday afternoon and earlier today, this afternoon. Like, over those last 24 hours, something internally changed, and I think that's a good thing. And if this is Ryan Poles taking leadership and accountability and continuing the collaboration with Eberflus and putting in his 2 cents and, making a strong case, or at least making sure his feelings are coming across, that gets me excited about, the person that Poles can be as a GM and
100%.
a leader of this football team on that side of it, because obviously, at the end of the day, it's a head coaching decision. They have to work together. But for Poles to be the guy to hey, what's the point of playing him? Tevin Jenkins, got re-injured. Michael Schofield got carted off. Who's protecting him? And what are we actually going to be doing? And I feel like the Vikings will play their starters, and we'll talk about that in a segment coming up later on, because I think there's a lot of reasons why they will, and we'll talk about it. But there's just no reason, to Greg's rant, to kind of kick off the show, to put Fields in more danger. Would we love the record? Absolutely. I would love to see that record be broken for Fields. But at the end of the day, his importance, and I'm meaning Fields' importance to this franchise, is more than just etching himself for a record in terms of rushing yards for a quarterback in a single season. He is much more important to this franchise than just getting those extra, 55, 60 yards, whatever it is. I feel like that would be the Bears' ego at play, and this is the time to show some humility.
No doubt about it, Will. And real quickly, I see Willie in the comments here. I agree with what he's saying about Justin Fields needs to still show more as a passer. No doubt about it. And that's why he was kind of in that game towards the end there. That's what Eberflus was talking about, the in-game experience. You can't replicate that off the field, right? The one problem I have with this, and I wrote it in my top takeaways from this Bears-Lions game, I watched it, so you guys don't have to. You go read that at allchgo.com. But the thing that really ticks me off, though, about the coaching philosophy, the philosophy, right, that we say here in CHGO Bears, is that was the reason why Justin Fields, and Justin wanted to stay in the game himself. He said that to Eberflus while he's on the sidelines. He wants to finish things out. Kudos to Fields. But the thing that Eberflus talks about, he really values game experience.
Mm-hmm.
So another guy that spoke today was Velus Jones Jr. The man had 5 offensive snaps, you guys. And his last offensive snap was that jet sweep that went for 13 yards. At no other point did Velus Jones Jr. get in the game on the offensive side. And that's supposed to be a guy you're building with Justin Fields. I know he's had an up and down year. But how can you not get on the field as a wide receiver, a third wide receiver, 11 personnel, and just be on the field? And yet he's preaching, Eberflus, that game-like experience is good for everybody. Why didn't you put Velus Jones Jr., your 3rd round draft pick, in the game then at all? So that really, just seeing how he has the standards for one guy didn't really cross over to, a rookie. as a wide receiver who honestly needs to be out there in those situations. He didn't have an opportunity to be on third down. Didn't have an opportunity to be in 2-minute warning. So that ticked me off.
Because to your point, Nick, and this is the answer, Willie Beam. This is Willie Beeman from Friday Night Lights. It's an honor. Jamie Foxx, great movie. He's been on our chest before, but I just wanted to make sure that's who it was. To your point, it's not just my rant isn't just about him playing, which I didn't think he should be in the second half at all. It's how they used him when he was playing. To your point, Velus Jones, end around jet sweep for 13 yards. Use that on the goal line if you're going to run QB instead of QB power and get your quarterback another hit that could potentially put him out. That's stupid. Guess who had the most carries on the Bears? This is going to be a real tough one. Two truths and a
tough
lie.
One.
Justin Fields had 10 carries. Guess how many Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery had each? Khalil Herbert had 5, and David Montgomery had 6. That's despicable. That's despicable. You have 2 guys that can be the workhorses that they are and take those hits. And Velus Jones has gotten a red zone run for a touchdown. Well, it was like a pitch run, so it was technically a pass, I think. That's where I have an issue with. It's not just play, it's how they used him. The Packers game, I thought they had the recipe. Try to play him from the pocket, no sacks taken that day, throw it out of bounds, minimal carries he had in that game. Maybe 1 or 2 quarterback design runs. They went back to like the Dolphins game plan for yesterday. It was irresponsible, especially after he takes 10 hits. Then you can be like, okay, let's reassess here. And they didn't do that. So that's where I have a problem with it when you say, well, he needs the game experience. Not this game plan. I need a better game plan than that. There's my
1,000,000% agreed.
There's my third rant of the night. I just shut it off and go home.
Don't worry, we'll find a point where we get to the.
Like I said, every time I start talking about it, I get enraged.
Your face even turns a little like pink or red. You don't have like a front light, so it's hard to tell, but there's something going on over there. It's a shade that's not. Well, it's kind of typical for you, but we'll get on past that. But real quickly, so the one thing about Velus that does intrigue me after all of this, though, like the mystery and why he's not out there, is if my memory serves me correctly, that draft pick was obviously Ryan Poles signed off on it, but it felt like a Matt Eberflus pick. I remember the phone call that they had, and it was like, hey, remember that conversation that we had between, it was Matt on the phone with Velus. Like, hey, remember that conversation that we had on the phone? And like, we really connected, and like, this is meant to be, you're meant to be here. And like, it felt like a Matt Eberflus pick. So for him not to even really see the field worries me, because I feel like he was someone that Eberflus is very high on. And for some reason, he's not, I don't know if it's like a doghouse, but it's definitely not on like the right hand for him. So I don't know what that is, but I just wanted to make sure like I reiterated that, because that's a memory that kept popping up on Nick was kind of expressing those updates. What else should we know from How It's All here today, Nick? That seems like the big one. No question. Is there anything else that we should discuss or at least have an update on?
The only other thing, Jaquan Brisker also spoke to the media, and he was asked a simple question. Have you enjoyed your rookie season here at the Bears? And ultimately he said yes. The one thing that did have him feeling, I guess, a little regrettable is that he can't really control this. He got injured a couple times. He had the thumb, he had the concussion, so he had to miss some time throughout his rookie season. And the big thing for him, he just wanted to play a full season because he felt like he was rising as a player, and then these injuries kind of just got in his way a little bit. So that kind of ticked him off about his rookie season. But when he was out there, when he's healthy, he's nearly played every single snap defensively. And Jaquan Brisker takes a lot of pride in that, saying that he can be a factor, tries to be a factor in the play whenever he's out on the field. So missing that time kind of bothered him, but that's one of the young building blocks for the Bears moving forward. Nicholas Moreano has talked openly about Brisker, and he shows those tendencies, that leadership quality that you want to see. And, for a guy that is in a season with only 3 wins in his first year in the NFL, he wants to be out there every single play. And the only thing that ticks him off about his rookie season is that he had to miss time due to injuries. But it was for Jaquan Brisker, it doesn't really surprise me to hear that kind of answer because we've seen how committed and how he plays on the football field. Yes, we've seen some, this defense give up a lot of big plays and things like that, but he's definitely one of the pieces for this defense moving forward.
All right. I appreciate those updates, Nick. We have a few more things we're going to get to here tonight. The very next thing that we're going to do, like right now, is our weekly free agency, kind of like last window shopping at this opponent. Man, the Vikings have a real small free agency class this year. There's not a lot of guys like when we're looking at the Eagles and the Lions. Like the list was long and I had to prune them down. And this was a week where it's pretty cut and dry. And honestly, out of the list, mostly I was like, I don't know. So I'm just going to give you the guys I put on my list, and you can just tell me if any one of them like pique your fancy. I think that's probably going to be the easiest way to go about it today, instead of player by player. But we have Patrick Peterson. Obviously, I don't think the Bears will go get him, but I didn't want to list him because I just want to say, hey, maybe he'll get out of the NFC North, get out of Minnesota, and that may be a good thing for the Bears. So Patrick Peterson's available this year. Then you have Shandon Sullivan, a 26-year-old cornerback. He's fourth on the team with 6 PBUs, 0 interceptions, 57 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss. You have Garrett Bradbury, a 28-year-old center who's the 10th highest graded center in the league this season. Irv Smith Jr., a tight end. Obviously, he got hurt earlier this year, which led to the Vikings trading for TJ Hawkinson. I'm assuming he's most likely going to be available after it's all said and done. Alexander Madison, a 25-year-old running back I'm sure everybody's well aware of. And then Nick Mullins, a 28-year-old quarterback who, in my eyes, could potentially be an upgrade over Trevor Siemian, but that's just besides the point. But that's really it. Is there like anyone from Minnesota that the Bears may look into, and maybe you had someone else that I didn't put on my list? Maybe Bradbury, the center, just because he's 28, which isn't like the oldest, but it's not the youngest, but 10th highest graded center in the league is not a bad thing. It would be a huge upgrade for the Bears, and I'm sure it wouldn't cost a lot, but at the end of the day, I guess we don't know. But like I said, it was a very underwhelming group, but I think that's a good thing for the Vikings looking as they're continuing moving forward in their franchise.
Well,
for me, go ahead, Greg.
I was just gonna say it. Yeah, I really like this Justin Jefferson guy. If he's available for a trade, please, for the love of God.
That'd be something.
I heard he hates Kirk Cousins. That's so
there we go.
I'm gonna start spreading rumors.
There you go.
No,
the internet's a great place for that. The internet's a great place to spread rumors. They kind of carry on fast there, Greg. Irv Smith is actually an intriguing option because I'm sure like a lot of Bears fans, the Ryan Griffin whole
bad.
What also pisses me off, now mention Ryan Griffin, why was he the guy targeted on 4th and 2? Why are you giving that ball? Like Justin Fields threw the ball to him and he doesn't convert. He did that. What was it, the week before the Buffalo game? It was also a 4th down opportunity. His knee hits before the first down line. Like, what are we doing giving the ball to freaking Ryan Griffin? I'm sorry. That's just things that frustrate me. Of course, I had to just rewatch that and relive that moment again. Like, why are we throwing it to Ryan Griffin on 4th down? It makes no sense. But so that's why I'm going to Irv Smith as a potential option, because it's not Ryan Griffin.
Hey, Irv Smith, 88 catches, 844 yards, 9 touchdowns in 3 years in 36 games. So it's not a full 3 years, but still 36 games to have almost 100 catches, 850 yards, and nearly 10 receiving touchdowns for a compliment to Cole Kmet. Like you said, Nick, like out of the list, like he was up there for me. And the only other one outside the center that I mentioned, depends on what happens to David Montgomery. And every time you look at running back, you can make a case for him. But I mean, Madison has been behind Cook, so his sample size is small, but he's been impactful. And his market value is only $1.2 million a year, which is like 54th of running backs, which I think for Madison, which would be tremendous value, because I feel like he's better than the 54th overall running back in the league. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just another one. But again, like overall, though, a little underwhelming free agency kind of scouting for me this morning.
Yeah, we keep the Vikings as the Vikings, and
we can get Duke Shelley. That's a player that's playing well over there, apparently.
He is playing well over there. I mean, is that surprising? Bears go to other teams, play well.
No,
so maybe
that
it's
happens.
not too surprising. Yeah, it's just
No.
what the
Tyrus Tonga.
Yeah, Tanya.
Yeah, he's over there too. All right. So we're gonna talk about this Bears historically bad defensive line, and then we're gonna have a discussion to kind of wrap up tonight's episode about this upcoming game on Sunday and whether or not the Vikings will play their starters, because Greg's passionate about it, and I feel like they will play their starters, and we'll get to that in a bit. But before we get to those two final talking points, I have a message to share to you from DraftKings. The fans, the tradition, the glory. There's nothing more thrilling than college football. It's bowl season, and the action is far from over. If you thought those playoff games were something, let's get to this national championship. My go-to for betting is DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps. Of course, this national championship game coming up here next week. Oh boy, it's going to be a lot of fun. I really enjoyed watching both of those games on New Year's Eve, and I am so excited for this national championship game. And right now, new customers can place a $5 pregame moneyline bet on a college football team to win. I think you only got like a couple chances here, so make sure you get on this to get $150 in free bets if they do. Plus, everyone can combine multiple bets for a bigger payout with the DraftKings same game parlays. Of course, I love the DraftKings app. I find it super easy, seamless to navigate. And of course, just getting to kind of like tailor my same game parlays to my liking is like one of my favorite things. I can tease some things if I'm feeling not ultra confident, but also if I'm feeling really good about one, kind of get some better odds too. So right now, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code CHGO, and new customers place a $5 pregame moneyline bet on a college football team to win and get $150 if your team does. That's code CHGO only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
And I have to tell everybody about FOCO. Chicago, you already got the best coverage for your favorite teams, so get fitted out in the best sports gear around. FOCO's got you covered from Soldier Field to the front room, north or south side, with hoodies, slippers, signs, bobbleheads, everything in between. Get decked out like tomorrow. I think the Bulls are actually doing their thing right now, Will. If I'm not mistaken, they're actually doing well. There you go, rocking the Bulls. Throwback shirt there. You can get decked out like tomorrow with apparel from the leader in sports merch and collectibles, FOCO. Looking for the perfect gift for the football fan in your life? FOCO's got you covered with hoodies to fight that Lake Michigan breeze. Check out FOCO.com. Click the link in the description below for all non-presale items. Use the promo code CHGO for 10% off.
All right, let's get into this historically bad Bears defense and defensive line. Unfortunate for us, but also very just interesting to kind of look into. So the question I posed to you guys earlier today is like, do the Bears just need to, and I mean completely rehaul the defensive line, because they have 10 sacks this season as a positional grouping. And Greg last night was like, man, I feel like that's like has to be like one of the worst in all time. And it is the lowest number that the Chicago Bears defensive line has ever had in the season, going back to when they started recording sacks all the way back in 1982. And they actually have on StatMuse years of sacks prior to that, which, I mean, kudos to them for going back and figuring that out and getting the sacks from those years previous. But it's still, based off of what I found, the lowest total that a Bears defensive line has ever, and I mean ever, had. And it doesn't stop there. The run defense, it's historically bad too. They are 50 yards away from allowing the most ever in Chicago Bears history for a single season. They are only 240 yards away, which, why does that feel possible this week? Because it had been that bad. But if they allow 240 yards on the ground to the Vikings, that would be the second most that any team has ever given up since 1984, and would be the third most all time. That 1984 team, if I remember correctly, was the Houston Oilers. So it's not even the team that exists today. And the Bears have already allowed 29 rushing touchdowns. That is also already the most in franchise history. It's only 3 away. If they allow 3 rushing touchdowns this week, they would have the sole possession of second most rushing touchdowns surrendered all time in a single season, not in Chicago Bears history, but in NFL history. And if they only allow 2 touchdowns, on the ground on Sunday, then they will tie for second all-time in NFL history. The 1961 Raiders allowed the most at 36. I don't think the Bears allow 7 rushing touchdowns on Sunday, so I think that record for the Raiders is safe. So obviously a lot of this starts up front, as we all know, and there are players that are set to become free agents at the end of this year. You have Armon Watts, Mike Pennell, and Angelo Blackson. Those are the only 3 players on the defensive line that contracts expire after this year that you can easily walk away from. That means you have Justin Jones, Travis Gibson, and Al-Quadin Muhammad all under contract through next season. They have 1 more year after this under deals. But guys, would it be okay with the Bears' extended cap space situation just to say, screw it, and get rid of them all and don't worry about it? And it's actually not as expensive as you would think. So Justin Jones, if you cut him, the dead space will be $2.5 million next season, but you still save $5 million overall. So that's not terrible, right? Travis Gibson, and as much as, a year ago, I would be slapping myself for saying, hey, cut Travis Gibson. His dead cap space is only $81,000. That's it. $81,000. Like that's nothing. That's a blip. You would save $1 million. And then Al-Quadin Muhammad, even though that they signed him this past free agency, if you cut him before next season, the dead cap space is only $500K, $500,000. You would save $4 million if you cut him. So overall, you cut those 3 guys, you get $3 million in saving roughly. Dead cap of roughly $3 million, and then the savings of $10 million overall. If we just start from scratch, maybe Justin Jones is the one guy out of the group that would bring back. But guys, I don't know if I'm going overboard, but just looking at how historically bad this is, as it stands today, the second day of the year, I would just fire everybody and build it from scratch because it can't get any worse. And this is the definition of it can't get worse because it's historically bad. So that's where I'm at. Maybe Justin Jones is the guy you bring back that you try to upgrade from and takes a more backup role, and then your depth is better.
Right.
But that's just where I'm at, guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about it. I don't want these guys being starters, and to me, they can still be depth pieces and rotational pieces. Cause I'm not out on Dom Rob. I'm not out on Travis Gibson. To me, we don't have any interior pass. It's a trickle down. It's just like the offensive line. It's a cohesive unit. And if one guy's not doing their job, let alone 3 next to you, you're going to take a hit with your stats and your production and your play. And so, that's where that's what I was trying to say yesterday. Yeah, we have a lot of holes to fill, but it's not like every single hole has to be a star player in order for the team to be good and compete, or the defense specifically with what we're talking about right now. So, I wanted a big time defensive end pass rusher from free agency or a D tackle, and then vice versa at the start of the draft, depending on where we pick. That's what they should be looking at. And you add those 2 pieces alone, and then who knows? Maybe, Travis Gibson all of a sudden rejuvenates his career. Maybe Dom Rob takes another step next year. That's how I'm looking at this right now. So, it's no, I mean, none of them to me are starters with the way they played this year, but at the same time, let's get some guys next to them to give a fair evaluation of their full potential.
Greg, could I at least get you to say the Bears?
You can cut Al-Quadin Muhammad.
Thank you. I was going to say, if I can't get all 3 of us to agree with that, I'm just going to honestly just exit the stream and you guys could finish the show. Because if I can't convince you
him, all due
to cut Muhammad, then we got problems. So as long as you're okay, again, with Gibson's contract and how inexpensive he is, fine, bring him back to camp, whatever. If he can earn a roster spot and he's good. I mean, he's played well for the Bears before. I'm not saying he doesn't have talent, but how bad it's been. And I understand it's all a trickle down effect / every, you're the sum of all of your parts. And it's hard when you don't have a Khalil Mack or a Robert Quinn to kind of help you out like he's had in years past. I get it. But when it's this historically bad, I just want to wipe my hands clean and start anew. But Nick, what are your thoughts about just, the defensive line unit and what Poles should potentially look at doing this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the lack of production from everybody, it is astounding. Like, not one of these guys has shown that, like, in this defense, that they have become a better football player, which is really disappointing too, because early on, you guys, that was the thing with Eberflus's defense. Even though they didn't have some of the marquee big name guys, he was able to get production out of them, right? Even though they weren't the big ticket defensive players, there was still production coming out of these guys. At this point, now going into week 18, we're just not seeing that. And Dominic Robinson, this is rookie season. I think he gets a pass from me.
Mm-hmm.
Travis Gibson going from a 3-4 to 4-3, back to transitioning. I don't want to put that as an excuse, but he needs to show stuff. He got the sack that Dominic Robinson, I think, should have been credited for in the game yesterday. But still, they're not at this point starting material. But for this Bears defense, they kind of have to be because of the lack of productive players they have. And for Eberflus and Allen Williams to get this defense rolling, they do need guys at the 3-tech position, at the edge, so that you can actually see this secondary even flourish more than what yesterday wasn't a good example of it, but 2 games prior to that, they were. So there's a lot of holes on this Bears team, and I would be okay with some of those guys being depth. Like, I'm seeing a lot of in the chat here too. I agree with that. They can be depth pieces, but we need to raise the floor with some dudes
and the ceiling
front and the ceiling, everything. Honestly, when it comes to this defense,
raise the house. We need bricks.
I know a guy who has bricks.
I got a few bricks. Actually, we're laying some stone right now. It's the ugliest stone I've ever seen.
Is it Flint stone? No. Sorry, I've been hanging out with the kids too much throughout this winter break. I know. So I just personally don't believe if you get yourself an edge rusher and a 3-tech, I don't think it's going to solve all your problems up front. I feel like it's more than just 2 guys, personally. I feel like it could be a 3 to 4 guy problem, and that's why I'm saying, like, posing the question of a complete overhaul here. Any final thoughts about this situation? We have a whole off season to talk about it, so obviously we don't have to go exhaust ourselves here. But
like I told you, Will, I want to know. I want to know if they don't get a sack next week, is it the worst of all time of any team?
No,
and I don't care if it takes you a week to find out.
No, so I can tell you that now. There are teams that only got like 10 sacks as an entire team in one season. There's been a few of those. I think the 2008 Chiefs or 2000, the Chiefs not that long ago actually were up there on the list, which really surprised me. But a lot of the other ones were like 1940, 1950s, and like it's hard for me to like take those just because they never counted sacks until like 82. Right. So like it's any team after 82 and after is where I'll do it. But I will personally share that to you over on Twitter later. I thought it was in my tweet last night before I went to bed, just saying I thought I put the whole list in there, like a link to it.
So I was delirious at that point, so it might.
You're still delirious.
I'm still delirious.
All right. So before we kind of close shop here for tonight, we need to figure out what's going to happen. And obviously, we are the 3 men that are going to determine if the Vikings are actually playing their starters or not. Like, there's no other way. But let me set the stage, and then you guys can just kind of fill in the blanks or just your thoughts on it. So I already been very vocal on this show. I believe the Vikings will play their starters, and there's a lot of reasons behind it. And like I said, I'm going to kind of set the stage. So right now, after that loss to Green Bay, they went from the 2nd down to the 3rd seed. And if the playoffs were starting next weekend, they would take on the Giants at home, who they just beat a week ago only by 3 points. Then if they win and San Francisco wins in the wild card round, they would head over to the west coast of Santa Clara to take on the 49ers. And they want to avoid that. They desperately should and would want to avoid that. Not because of, not only because of them losing home field advantage and like, hey, we feel better if we play at home. The 49ers are 7-1 at home this season. They are a very good home team. You do not want to go into that environment in a place where they've been winning football all year long and in a playoff game. And
That's if they win their first playoff game. That's where they'd go.
That's right. They would have to beat the Giants, and they just did, but it was only by 3. So I again, like they would have to go into the second round, and then they would lose. And if the 49ers win at the same time, they would lose that home field advantage because the 49ers would be the higher seed, and then they would take them on. So they would have to travel out to the West Coast. So that's one big reason why I expect them to play their starters, because they're going to want to play for that second seed. The Vikings too, by the way, they are 8-1 at home themselves. So they should want to play at home this year. They are 4-3 on the road. And again, like if they beat the Bears and if San Francisco loses to the Cardinals, which I know it's a long shot, but what I think the NFL did was really interesting earlier today, and that was put that Cardinals 49ers game in that late afternoon slot. So that's later in the day. So the Vikings have no idea what's going to happen to that game. And I think if they sat their starters because they said, oh, no way the 49ers lose, and then, maybe the Bears beat them because they sit their starters, which I would hate, and I'll have reasons why I'll hate that later. And then the 49ers see that, and then they just like whatever, and then they end up losing, or maybe they play their starters and still lose. Either way, the Minnesota Vikings will be kicking themselves in the ass for not giving themselves a chance at that second seed. So that's why, for all those reasons, I feel like they will want to just play for like positional seeding purposes. But Greg, you hit it perfectly earlier in this episode when you said they need to find a way to gain some momentum heading into the playoffs, because coming off a loss like that and then just sitting your starters does not send a good message. They've lost 2 of their last 4. It took them to overtime to go ahead and beat the Colts. I mean, yeah, they had a good comeback, but still, like, yikes. They went down a ton against the Colts. And I know the head coach O'Connell had a quote after the Packers loss that said this is a game of momentum. It's a momentum-based game. So if he actually means that, then he should not want to just kind of, take his foot off the gas pedal here this week. And then for the Bears purposes, the Bears want to lose. Like at this stage, you want to have to lose, because the first overall is in play, because the Bears can have that first pick with a loss, and then the Texans go ahead to beat the Colts, which they're playing Sam Ellinger. There's a good chance the Texans could win.
Game or a 3?
It is. I believe that's a noon game, and I am going to be scoreboard watching that one. Nick, definitely double check that. But I feel
if
like
I wasn't doing CHGO
noon game,
I would be at Indianapolis, painted in blue.
So I live an hour away. Is that my job? Is that my job? I just drive up. Drive up 69.
Representative there to rally the troops on the Colts sideline. However, we got
sure tickets are cheap.
Hey, we got to all be Sam Ellinger fans here. I know Joey, producer, Texas alum there. He's going to be cheering on Sam Ellinger, but we all need to.
Nick, I was pumping up Sam Ellinger before they drafted Justin Fields. I was like, hey, this is a guy, if they don't get a quarterback early, I would look into in the later rounds. I still remember like some of my scouting report on him. Good.
Well, he needs to come to play on Sunday.
Yes, he
needs to come to play.
No, he does not.
Sam Ellinger? Oh, sorry. He needs to not play. I'm saying the complete
I like
opposite.
the kid, but I don't want him to play well.
Sorry, there too for a second.
Sorry.
We're rallying the Texans.
Yes.
You want Lovie Smith?
Yeah, no, it threw me off. It threw me off, Greg.
Confusing.
All right, so here we go. I'm going to make this clear. First overall pick: Bears lose, Texans beat the Colts. You got that, Nick?
Yes. No, I know it.
The simplest part of this whole thing is
I'm just making sure
the Texans to win, and we didn't understand it.
Okay, there are 2 scenarios in which the Bears finish with the second overall pick. Either that's a Bears loss and a Texans loss, or a Bears win, but then you also need Denver and Arizona to win. Like that's a lot to ask for if the Bears win, and this is why the Bears are going to want to lose this game. If they win and Denver or Arizona lose, then the Bears go down to number 3. And if the Bears win and both Denver and Arizona lose, the Bears drop all the way down to 4. So you feel like, like you can say, 1 to 4, 2 to 4. That's not a big swing, but it's huge when it comes to players available and draft capital. But do you guys have I know you do, Greg. Feel free to jump in, but just like I feel like just for everything I've outlined and plus what we talked about earlier, like the Vikings should be playing their starters.
Yeah, they should. I agree with all your points there. And if they don't play their starters, I will never forgive Minnesota for it ever again. And if the Bears go out there and try to win a game over backups against the Vikings, it's literally just as dumb as what they did yesterday with Fields. Like, you're trying to set your franchise up. You're trying to do a rebuild, which I feel they've done right by getting rid of, big contracts, getting rid of players that don't want to take a deal that's fair, like Roquan. They offered people like, oh, they let Roquan go. They offered Roquan money. He didn't want to take it. Not going to overpay because Roquan's playing this standoff. So I've agreed with what Ryan Poles has done. When you rebuild something, we talked about it earlier in the season, Will, in construction, you rip it down and you rebuild it from the start. You don't patchwork. Patchwork never works. It never is sustainable. It might work for a second, but then it all falls apart, and then we're back fixing it 3 years later. It is the exact same concept when you rebuild in sports. It's true. And so I like what Ryan Poles has done, but that's why also being conscientious of the health of the team and your biggest asset in Justin Fields, it's also Ryan Poles' job to understand the moment here. And this is your chance to acquire a huge draft asset. And I can't emphasize it enough, the difference between 2 and 4. We get 1, that's a miracle. And a miracle you should be putting yourself in position for. But at the end of the day, 2 is just as big as 1 because there are 3 quarterbacks that this league is interested in. I don't know why they're interested in Will Levis, but apparently they are. But I know why they're interested in Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Did you watch them play this weekend here in their college football playoffs? They were spectacular. CJ Stroud was spectacular against a good Georgia defense. So you have the number 2 pick, and your potential of being able to trade back and acquire more picks, if you fall to 4, you lose that potential. I don't think there will be a trade back option at 4. Somebody's not going to try to trade up to you to get a defensive lineman. That rarely happens. Mm-hmm. So it happens when a team is trying to get a quarterback. And even just 1 or 2 spots, you could end up at 4, but if you're 2, you could trade back to 4 and just be in the same spot you were already going to be in if you're dumb enough to win. But now you've added yourself a additional first-round pick, maybe 2, maybe another second-round pick. Yeah, there's charts that say what the value of that trade-up would be. And some say that it would be their first-round pick this year and next year and a second-round pick. The Bears have a lot of holes, right? Well, then how are you going to fill this team? By getting more draft equity, more draft spots, more positions can be filled that way. It's really common sense. And for any fan that wants to push back on common sense, I'm going to respectfully disagree as nicely as I can because my patience is wearing thin with some of the logic we have flying around Twitter and in our chats sometimes. Let's use common sense for once and be a good franchise. The Eagles sat Jalen Hurts when they had the difference between the 9th pick and the 5th pick. They used that 5th pick to trade back. They now have the Saints' top 10 pick going into next year while they're looking at a Super Bowl this year. That's what a good franchise does. The Patriots have been trading back in drafts for decades. They are a good franchise. So here is rant number 4. I am literally so angry, and I just want to get through the season, and it just drives me crazy. Number 2 pick, if they don't get it, I'm going to have another freaking meltdown next week.
Real quickly, you guys, all I got to say, real quick, go Lovie Smith. That's how we'll end it. Go Lovie Smith, and the Bears will take care of business because they'll end up losing, but go Lovie. We're rooting for Lovie Smith next Sunday at noon.
All right, that sounds great. We do have to kind of wrap things up here because over in the studio, they got to get ready for Bulls post game.
Rant?
No,
not tonight.
Joey Spathis is the greatest producer of all time.
I have one AirPod in. If you do a fifth one, I'm gonna have to switch ears, or else I'm gonna have like hearing problems over here in my right one. But no, if we had time, Greg, I would definitely find a way to poke you one last
You guys
time.
can just go, and I'll just yell at everyone for the next 2 hours until I pass out.
So you know how many hours it takes of you yelling to pass out. I think that's
it would
impressive.
be 2, and then I would just fall down forward. On
You just hear a
laptop.
big thud.
What was that? Oh, that was just Greg. He's done. And it'd be like me when the baby, like when he runs around and falls asleep, like, oh, he's so tuckered out. Oh, he's worked himself up, like those things. But regardless, I'm going to let Joey get ready for Bulls post game. I'm going to be professional for him here. So I want to thank everyone for joining us throughout the entirety of tonight's episode. Hendricks, I hope I answered your question. I saw it starred the Bears if they win and the Broncos and Cardinals lose, the Bears will not still have the second overall pick. They drop all the way down to 4. I just want to make sure that's clear because I saw that question in the chat a long time ago earlier in this show. I just want to say thanks to everyone for joining us for this After Dark episode, the last here of the season. But the good news is we're still doing this after the season. I don't know if you know that, Greg, but we're doing this thing. After Dark is going to live on.
Let's go. We ain't stopping this train.
Hell no. No, we're not. But we'll talk to you all soon. Have a good rest of your week. And until next time, bear down, Chicago.